Alright guys, Copper Cutlass, full disclaimer. This video is long, but you guys are going to have to kind of follow along, because if you guys have been following along, you guys know that we've been kind of struggling, but also have been having, the car has not been falling apart. It has been running good. So you guys are going to have to bear with me and listen to this. Most of my videos are long, but there's a lot to unload. I'm talking like, I got a full day of racing to talk about almost, and issues and going back and history and whatnot, but just bear with me. I'm going to put all of the goodies at the beginning, but the reward is going to be at the end when I kind of tie it all together from where we were 2 years ago to now. And I think we've completely gone backwards. And, you know, keep it simple, stupid. No reason to complicate shit. The car ran good before. Wasn't worth it.
Tony Johnson, 1136, 119. Russ, 1367, 118. Street bike, I'll take you, lane 11. Street bike, lane 11.
About that, I think that's been in other videos, but we went out for our second point race, and by the way, it is Modelo time. Happy Mother's Day to all the ladies out there, even though I'm pretty sure no mother watches this. So if you're married, you know, tell your wife I said Happy Mother's Day if you have kids from me. She may not know me, but she will know me after this. So either way, we went out for our second points race, and I was catching lights that were good. I think my slowest light of the day was an 044, 043. I'll put a picture up of the time slips. We went out for first round of eliminations. The car had ran an 1175. First pass 1179. Second pass, and I'm like, we had like 2 hours in between that run, but it was before noon. So I figured I'll put an 1177 on the window and call it good. The car ran a tenth slower. I wheeled it and did everything right, but the car just ran a tenth slower and it fell off at the 330. So there's a couple of things to take into consideration. After about noon or 1 o'clock, the D8 tends to settle at this track, and then it steadies out. It was already, by the time we made our first round of eliminations, I think the temperature had hit its peak. And not to mention our fuel tune is still a little off. So being lean with heat soak and heat, you think the engine would want to favor heat with a lean tune, but it doesn't. I mentioned the lean tune, and I just think the 850 carburetor is wrong for my for my combination. I think that there isn't sufficient signal to the booster, and that was what was advised to me by somebody that I reached out to just to ask, hey, this thing is lean with an 84-94 combo jet. This thing shouldn't be fat. So I just think it's the wrong carburetor, but we'll save it. It'll probably work for our 427 Chevy. So, but I am going to go back to the 750. We did not put the MSD distributor in the car. And I'll tell you guys why. So I wanted to fatten up the tune without taking the carburetor apart. So the easiest way to do that is to cork up the headers. I have seen as much as 1 full point in the AFR corking up the exhaust. Apparently the mufflers I have on, they sound great, but are even more restrictive than the straight through ones I used to have. Of course, they were straight through. But what happened was I had an amateur hour problem and I forgot to disconnect the evac tubes. So what I in turn did was I actually pressurized the crankcase through back pressure. I blew oil out of the filler tube of the engine, and I've cleaned it up, but all of this was absolutely covered in oil. I mean, it was everywhere. But guys, this is where, if you hit the track, I don't care if you have a 14-second car, if it's modified and you've done work to it, run an engine diaper. It does not make the car run hotter on the street. But at the track, had I not had that diaper, oil would have hit the ground. I had to take the diaper out. There is oil in it. All I left was 3 drips of oil at the shutdown area, and they said I was smoking from the 8th mile out. We still managed to run a 12.3 at 108. I stayed in it, but I have to kind of go back a little bit because I think I may have mentioned that there's a bit of a discrepancy with my timing marks. So I think when I was running the MSD, the timing marks that I had set on this balancer years ago, I forgot the increments and I assumed and I didn't check. So there's a lot of assuming here, and it makes an ass out of you and me, mainly me here, but I'm willing to bear it all, right? So I think I was running maybe tops 32 degrees with the MSD distributor and with the HEI the last time we put it out at the track. I think I may have mentioned in the one video where I messed with it and then I had to go back and reset everything because of it. But essentially now I am seeing 34 degrees of total timing, actually 34 degrees of total timing, and the engine is not happy up top. It is way too lean. I'm getting a little bit of a lean pop. It might be detonation because at that point, with our compression being 10.6 to 1 on pump gas with that much timing, we may have a hint of detonation. But I will say that I had the car at the shop this morning because I dropped off the trailer, unloaded the car, and just parked it inside the shop where I work at. I beat it up. Oil pressure's good. Didn't smoke, didn't spew out any oil. But I did buy a compression test kit because and by the way, these things are cheap and they're kind of foolproof. So, and I'm going to do the whole proper procedure for this. A lot of people do it wrong, and you're supposed to do it dry and then wet and then check the variance and yada, yada, yada. And I've only done a compression test once, so I had to read back up on it, and it was years ago, and I did it wrong then. But the main reason for the compression test kit and the reason why I'm doing it is I just want to make sure that I'm still making good cylinder pressure. I know that I have blow by because I built this engine loose. This the ring gaps on this thing are like for nitrous. So I always build my motors loose. It's just the way I've always done it. Yes, there's power to be made in ring seal, but it's also a little forgiving if, for at least me and my theory, if I tend to leave my end gaps just a little on the looser side. So I have something that is more suitable on the minimal end for nitrous versus naturally aspirated. But I think there's power to be made in a loose combination. That's an old theory from the stock eliminated days of the 70s and 60s, but a lot of my car uses a lot of those old tricks because that's all I can afford to do. So that's pretty much the skinny of it. We're gonna go back to the 750. We're gonna hit the track. I do have a pressure tap kit. I have to check the transmission. I think second gear is starting to go in this thing. In the one video that I posted from our last race, the only video we got, you hear my car in the burnout box where it sounds like I revved it up, but actually what I was doing was I was trying to get a full revolution out of the tire in the water box so that I can get the tire completely covered in water for my burnout. And then obviously as you do your burnout, it dries it out, it gets it hot, whatever. So I have to check that. And I'm gonna go back to the 750 and see how the car reacts. We've been kind of chasing our tails with the fuel tune. And to be honest with you, a lot of these carburetor modifications to me are not worth it. And I can tell you from experience that the modifications, yes, they make the carburetor better, but also everything else has to be better. It is not going to be forgiving. You're making it very precise. It's like a quadrajet. A quadrajet is very misunderstood because it's meant to meter very, very finely. So you're refining this carburetor even more. And these carburetors aren't meant to be perfect. When you buy a box stock Holley, chances are if you picked it right for your application, it should be on the rich side, and they do that for a reason, so it can be forgiving. When the very first time that the guy who touched my carburetor, which by the way, that was the fastest the car ever ran with the tune that he put in it, it worked very well, but we only went faster by like 1.3 tenths or something like that. It really wasn't worth the hassle. And thinking about it the other day, when I had him go over the carb because I wanted to be able to flat foot it off the line, so we kind of leaned it up off the line and we took a little jet out of it. But we saw no change in the 60 foot and we saw no change in the mile per hour. We just kind of got rid of a little stumble that, now that I know more, I could have probably easily fixed. But and all we did was we changed the air bleeds, the idle feed restriction channel was modified, and we changed pump cams, and pretty much that was, and rejetted it. We went a couple jets down. We actually leaned it up. But we leaned it up like 4 jet sizes or so because he wasn't comfortable with the amount of jet that I was actually running in that combination, which is the same combination except this one has now more cylinder head work, which also killed performance, which is why I re-geared the car to gain back some 60 foot, and we didn't give up much up at the top besides like a mile an hour, but we're hitting the traps at 68, 69. But when we ran at Indy, it would have been a Tuesday night before we hit the road for Indy, or actually Monday, because we left on a Wednesday, technically Thursday morning. He came out, we modified the carb, we tested it in our lot at the shop, which I can get through first and second gear in our lot at minimum, and it ran good. We got to Indy, and it was about 20 to 25 degrees hotter. And it was just not happy. It was lean popping. It was bad. Or I think it was lean popping. So we changed the idle feed restrictors. And I should have written this stuff down that day, but I didn't. But I think I had like idle feed restrictors from 32 to 41, and we changed them to a 41, I want to say. We leaned it up. It was just too much for that, but I want to say it was lean. Again, my memory's fuzzy from that day, because he immediately walked over and said, I heard your car, we need to change this, and you need to get another run in to make sure it's going to run good. And then eventually the car actually ran an 11:57 in the heat. Our fastest passed day at that point was an 11:62 at 113. We went 11:57 at 113, but the 60 foot stayed the same at a 154. We still haven't 60 footed that good out of this whole deal since we messed with it. So really, if the 750 that I built with my buddy Dave, which we just followed a basic recipe that he already had, I'm going to revert that carburetor and buy stock metering blocks and set it up how I used to have it, because I would take the car to the track in the spring and I know that it would do 1160s all day long. In the heat, if it was average heat, we'd be 1180s. If it was a little on the hotter side, 1190s. If I ran it through the mufflers, it would be like 12.0s. And the car was consistent. I should have never messed with anything because there's nothing wrong with this engine. There was never anything wrong with this engine. You know, eventually the oil pump would have failed, but you know, we would have fixed it, gone through it, and I kind of regret finessing a lot of more things because it just added a lot more variables. I think I proved that I can have adequate spark with the HEI versus the MSD on the same day, because really the MSD only delivers multiple spark at up to 3,000 RPM. After that, you're kind of left at your mercy. And really, this thing idles pretty clean with the HEI, and that's, I reset the idle mixture screws, which again, if the idle mixture screws on this thing aren't set right, I will have a serious stumble off the line. Right now, they're at a turn and a quarter, and that's with the mufflers. Without the mufflers, they need to be like 1 3/8. It is that touchy. It's very kind of annoying. Because, you know, for like the 5 seasons that I ran this engine, once I had the tune in it, I left it and I didn't touch it. The last 2 years, I've just been chasing my tail. I know my AFR may not be working the best, but I am checking the spark plug deep down in the porcelain with an ear scope. So you can take all of this with a grain of salt. It's just kind of how our day went, and I'm not frustrated, but it's not going to be a good season just because of the way it started. I'm driving the car very good. The car is just not working how it should. And it just comes down to the carburetor. I have to we have to go out and do more testing. We have almost a month between our last and next race. So hopefully I can hit the track and maybe do it in one shot. If not, we're going to have to take the car out twice, which seat time has benefited me because I've hit the track 4 times in the last month and our reaction times are good. The launch points I'm very consistent with, and our lights are only getting better. So one way or another, we have to get to the track no matter what, just to upkeep. So I'll let you guys go. Share, like, subscribe, follow me on Instagram, Scott Cutlass.